Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a book haul video. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I hold in the first quarter of the year, and I actually haven't accumulated too many books, otherwise I would have done a book haul a lot sooner than this, but I've done a couple of pre-orders, I've collected a couple of books from unhauls that other friends have done, and I've bought 1 or 2 copies myself. So I thought I'd just collate them all here and show you what I've recently hauled. I'll start really quickly with the pre-orders because I don't actually own them yet, and I probably won't own them until July and September, so I don't know if you can guess what they are just from that, but the first thing I got was the Fae Crate Dark Age box by Pierce Brown, and they did a box with Skyward as the book I think last year. I did an unboxing for it and I really liked the quality of the items, so I'm getting a themed box this time. It's the Dark Age Hangover Recovery Kit, which I find great, and obviously I've pre-ordered it already, so I can't wait for that to come. I don't know how I feel about Dark Age yet. I know Iron Gold kind of not let me down, but it wasn't that great compared to the Red Rising series, so I'm hoping that Dark Age redeems the whole series for me. The other pre-order I got was 2 copies of Dark Dawn, so I ordered Dark Dawn from Waterstones, which has the black stained edges, and I ordered Dark Dawn from Goldsboro Books, which has the, it's hard to describe, but I want to say the galaxy stained edges as well. And if you've seen my bookshelf tour, you'll know that I have like a Nevernight shrine, I guess, on my bookshelves, and I've collected every edition so far, including pre-orders, hardcovers, and advanced reading copies, so adding those to my collection in September will be very good, and I can't wait for that book to come out. It's one of my most anticipated releases of all time. So the first book I have in this haul was also a pre-order, and I ordered it in November and it came at the end of March. So it is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, and this is the Goldsboro edition, and it's got the beautiful stained edges. I have already read this book. I've talked about it in both a reading wrap-up and a reading vlog, so if you want to hear my thoughts about it, go over and visit those. But this is a female-led queer dragon fantasy book, and it's an adult fantasy written in multiple perspectives. I did really like it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and this edition actually is signed and numbered. So this edition is number 80 out of 500, and I'm really happy, weirdly, that I got a round number. So the next book I got is a lot smaller, and it's called What Mama Left Me, and I actually talked about this in my January wrap-up, I think, or my January to February wrap-up. I read it at the very beginning of the year because Bloomsbury was kind enough to send me an advanced reading copy of it. They also sent me a final copy, which is why I'm showing it in this book haul, but I gave this about a 3 out of 5 stars. It's a young adult contemporary on the lower tier of young adult, so it follows a main character, and she's a black girl who's 13 years old, and her mother has passed away and she's living with her grandparents. So it's kind of an exploration to family and grief and loyalty, and it was a decent read. I liked it, but it's not anything that's going to stand out to me. So the next book I got is actually a sequel, and it's called Heartforger by Rin Chupeco, and this is the sequel to The Bone Witch, and I believe the third book, Shadow Glass, is also out as well. This is kind of like an amalgamation of The Name of the Wind and Memoirs of a Geisha, and those are 2 books that I really loved. So this series follows T, or Taya. I haven't listened to the audiobook, so I don't know how to pronounce her name, but it follows her, and she accidentally resurrects her brother. So she's a necromancer, and she goes to train and figure out this ability, but she doesn't quite have a handle on it, and also bone witches in this society are really frowned upon, so she gets bullied a lot as well. So we follow that perspective, and then we follow her in the future looking back on that perspective, and you don't really know what she's up to in the future either, but it seems very dark, and she doesn't seem like a very heroic character, and so I'm really interested to follow her along in the sequel and see how everything pans out. The next thing I got is actually a bind-up of a manga that I really like, and I actually got a couple of bind-ups, but I'm only going to hold up one because I don't have the rest with me, but it is Full Metal Alchemist, and this is a bind-up of the first 3 manga books. One of my friends was getting rid of these copies because he replaced them with a different version, so I snapped them up when he was unhauling them, which I feel very lucky about because these can get quite pricey. This series is one of my absolute favourites, and I haven't even finished reading it yet, which is why I grabbed these. This follows 2 brothers who are alchemists, and they try and resurrect their dead mother, and then that goes horribly wrong. So the series follows them trying to right their wrongs. The next book that I got is actually called Sky by Ondine Sherman, and this is an April advanced reading copy, and I don't actually know when it comes out, presumably in April sometime. Not sure if it's the beginning or the end of the month, but I got this from my friend Alex. She went to a showcase for young adult titles that are coming out in 2020, and this was in their show bag, so she kindly gave this to me because I was interested in it. Even though I was interested in it, I don't really remember what it's actually about. I know it's a contemporary book. I know it's about an Australian girl girl, and I know her mother has passed away, and it kind of deals with her fighting her small town on animal cruelty, I think, as well. So that might have been why I was interested in it. It has the potential to be really poignant, and I like that it's Australian, so I popped that on my TBR pile. The next book is also pink, and it is A Quiet Kind of Thunder, and it's also a young adult contemporary. This isn't an Australian one though, but it follows two main characters. One of them is a girl with selective mutism, and then the other is a new boy to her school who is actually deaf, and so they kind of get forced together because they both know sign language, and from that buds a really tentative romance, and it's really honest and really cute, and it's the right amount of fluff and reality and anxiety, and it's just the best book. I don't usually read contemporary books, but when I picked this up, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend it to anyone. Even if you're a fantasy reader, even if you read contemporary a lot, it's just the cutest thing ever, and I highly recommend it. The next book I also got from a friend's unhaul, and it is Skullduggery Pleasant, book 1, and I don't actually know what this series is about either. You're probably going to sense a trend, but I know that he's written another series, and the first book in that series is called Demon Road, and I own that but also haven't read it. But that book is kind of like the TV series Supernatural, but for a young adult audience, which is why I'm excited about it. And this one I just read the blurb of, and it sounds really amazing, so I'll just read that to you as well. Meet Skullduggery Pleasant, wisecracking detective, powerful magician, sworn enemy of evil, oh yes, and dead. It sounds really cool, and I'm assuming the skeleton on the front is him, so I can't wait to read this one. The next couple I don't really know much about. I just picked them up or received them, and so I'm going to power right through them. And the first one is Fire by Maria V. Snyder, and this I believe is in the series of the Poison Study books. And I do have the first book, Poison Study, on my priority list to read this year, so that's why I ended up picking up this book, because a friend was getting rid of it. So I thought I would just add it to my series, and then if I liked them I could continue on, and it would be really easy because I wouldn't have to go out and buy the next book in the series. All I know is that Poison Study, the first book, deals with this girl. It's a young adult fantasy, and she has the ultimatum of she can either die or she can become the poison taster for the king, and that's what the series follows. The next two books are actually advanced reading copies, and I received these from Bloomsbury Publishing in, I believe, at the start of the year, probably in February, but I don't think they're February releases. So the first one looks like a contemporary book, and it releases in June, and it's called You're Crushing It. I think it's a very digestible contemporary book that's going to be pretty fast paced. I'm not sure if it's non-fiction or fiction. It says on the back that positivity for living your real life is the tagline, and it sounds potentially non-fiction, but I don't really mind. Either I'll pick it up if I have time, or I'll probably leave it on my shelf for a while. And then the other book is a young adult fantasy, and I believe it's an elemental type of fantasy, and it's called We Are Blood and Thunder. And again, I don't know much about this one either, except that it comes out in April, but I'm doing the Owls Readathon in April, so I don't know if I'll actually have time to pick this one up. And the last book on this list is Scorched Dragons by Amy Kaufman, and this is her sequel to Ice Wolves, which is her middle grade elemental fantasy series. I can't really say much about this one because it is the sequel and it's only recently come out, but the first book, Ice Wolves, follows a brother and a sister, and it's a middle grade series, so they're actually quite young. It's younger than young adult, and this world deals with two magical schools, and shapeshifters attend these schools, but there's a big war between the shapeshifters, and the shapeshifters are the Ice Wolves and the Scorched Dragons, and usually they're pretty unrelated, but these two siblings are actually one and the other. And so, for lack of a better word, it kind of follows their journey and their adventure in figuring out how to control these shape-shifting powers and getting separated and having to find each other again. So these are all the books that I got in the first part of the year. I'm surprised that I didn't buy more books, but I have been watching my wallet a little bit, and I'm very lucky that a couple of friends were unhauling some books, and I'm really lucky that publishers send me books as well, because that's been drying up recently, which is fine because I don't want too many books on my TBR pile. But these are everything that I got, plus my pre-orders, of course. If you've read any of these or if you own any of them, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll catch you in my next video. Bye. So the back says, meet Skullduggery Pleasant, wisecracking detective, powerful magician, sworn enemy, anemone.